You're tuned in to another episode of The Coaching Lounge with your host, Rebecca Gordon, lead life coach at satellitelifecoaching.com. Listen to interviews with creative thinkers, motivational speakers, models of success, and key people of influence. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now.
I'm Rebecca Gordon, and today I'm joined in the Coaching Lounge by Dr. Shani Byard, who is an educator and consultant who specialises in educational leadership for social and racial justice. As well as the owner of Message Media Education, a professional development training company designed to counter media's influence on the negative perceptions of black youth in our media-saturated society, Dr. Shani also teaches critical media literacy for the Masters in Education program at UCLA. Those who attend Dr. Shani's training include youths, seniors, educators and professionals from all ethnic racial backgrounds who learn to become Afro Media Literate, gaining the necessary tools to dismantle unconscious racism, challenge media stereotypes and cultivate interracial understanding. I'm very honoured to have Dr. Shani here with me in the Coaching Lounge studio. Dr. Shani, welcome to the Coaching Lounge. How is it in LA today?
It's actually pretty warm. We've had some chilly weather lately, and so the sun is out. It's a beautiful day.
Excellent. So you're on the right side of the States, because I know on the other side, on the East Coast, there's been a lot of snow, hasn't there been?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so give thanks that you're in warmer climes. But just to say that I came across the work that you do due to just doing some random research on the internet for a course I was delivering. And I found a video which is Let's Start a Conversation, which you facilitated. And what I particularly liked was the questions that you asked the panel members, as well as recognising that your work is actually very crucial and important to challenging and raising awareness of the misconceptions of black people in the media.
Yeah.
So today's interview is going to touch on the work that you do and related topics. But can you tell me what motivated you to set up Message Media Education, Dr. Shani?
Well, I actually my first career was in television production and music video production. So I actually went to school. I got my undergrad in TV production and jumped straight into TV production and ended up producing my own music video show here with Dr. Dre, of all people.
Yeah.
And so I spent about 4 years in TV and music video production. And I was able to, long story short, I partnered with Dr. Dre to produce a TV show that I'd started out here. And when I came on board, we shot about 12 more episodes. I had shot about 60 before we partnered. And then Eminem came out, and so he said that he was putting all of his extra projects on the back burner, and he was just only focusing on Eminem. And so my project got shelved.
Oh, I see.
But I stayed on board with the crew. This was the time where Dr. Dre was just kind of getting back. There's a point to all of this.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. Yeah.
He was just getting back together with Snoop. They had parted for a little bit, and his whole camp included Eminem and Warren G and Exhibit and even Ice Cube. And so when I came on board, it was a really vibrant time. And when the project was shelved, I stayed on and began to do set photography for all of the music video shoots. Anyway, that placed me in a place of observation and reflection. I wasn't, knee deep in production constantly. And I said, ooh, I just became really acutely sensitive to the negative messages that I was portraying. It actually kind of allowed me to take a step back and really make the connection that young people were watching these music videos and they don't have the training that I do in terms of analyzing media. Okay. And I knew that they were consuming blindly the messages that were being emitted from their music videos and stuff. And it was very unhealthy life habits. I knew they looked up to them. And so I decided then to leave the media, essentially production industry, and focus on media and arts education.
I see. And that is, you're talking about the influence of the music and the lifestyle. And just to say, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's actually from Jamaica, but he was speaking to a friend of his who is from Angola, I think it was. And he was telling me that even in Africa, the whole of this Americanism is very much ingrained. So that is the power that music has worldwide, really, yes. So when you said it gave you a time and space to observe and reflect, in that time and space, and from your observations now, what would you say are the implicit messages that the media sends, and how does this damage the mind?
Well, I don't know if you got a chance to read. I drafted a report of my work since 2008. It's downloadable at messagemediaed.org. And one of the things that I documented is how we open most of my trainings, which is, what does media tell you about Black people, right?
Yeah.
What does media teach you about Black people? And, the consensus is, pretty much similar across the board. We get messages about Black males, Black youth, Black women, Black families in relationship to being unintelligent, highly criminal, somewhat disposable. As a people, violent, drug abusers, people who need help, and people who are out of control, savage. I get that word a lot. Disposable. I get that word a lot. So it's not so great, and it becomes unconscious. The influence of the media becomes unconscious. It gets internalized both by the African or Black or African American consumer, and also everyone else. Every single person internalizes those messages about Black people.
That's right. Because I was inspired to set up a course based on the video you facilitated, and some of the feedback from the women with the woman's conversation is that actually they go into the workplace and this is what they're presented with, the negative images on the TV. We have a particular program over here which a lot of people watch, and there are two Black female characters whose portrayal of a Black woman is actually quite negative, and this is what people who don't know what we are actually really and truly like take on board, and therefore the treatment of us reflects their misconceptions, really. So in agreement, full agreement with what you've shared just there. But it's just for the record, this recording will be going out from this week, but it's now the 24th of January, and there's a current debate on ethnic diversity in the media, and in your neck of the woods, relating to the Oscar nominations. Yes. So just checking with you then. I mean, we've got a famous comedian over here in the UK called Lenny Henry, who's really been campaigning to redress the lack of African, Black, Caribbean representation in the media. So, for where you are in the States and the whole debate about the Oscar nominations and not enough black actors being put forward, what's your opinion on the representations of black people in the media, from Hollywood, from that level of things?
Well, I mean, I do agree that uh, I do agree that there's a lack of diversity on the um, on one side of the of media, right? The people and images and faces that we see in film, TV, radio. Well, not necessarily radio, but videos and stuff like that for the Oscars film. But I do agree that there needs to be diversity there. I think what's even more challenging of a discussion and conversation and what will lead towards actual change is the diversity of ownership of productions, right? Investors, when we start looking at the systemic practices of production of media in terms of who is really behind greenlighting the shows that we see, then we can begin to dismantle this sort of dominant ideology that frames people of color in Hollywood.
Right. Okay. I've got a particular question to ask you about that a little later on. But before then, I just want to touch on the work that you're doing, Afro Media Literacy. So I know that you have a very good framework that you use, which I've sort of like the word I think I'll say is piggybacked or borrowed, but with your permission, just to declare there for the purpose of the course that I ran. And so can you, just for the listeners, explain Afro Media Literacy and how you use the framework and what the framework is, because it's very powerful, Dr. Shani.
Thank you. The Afro Media Literacy is a framework that I designed to teach anyone, or I guess I should say to walk anyone through the process of re-education, essentially, about their perception of Black people. And if it's Black people that I'm working with, then it is designed as a framework to help people walk through the re-education and hopefully healing process and empowerment for Black people. So it is a framework that's rooted in bridging two different theories and practices together. One is critical media literacy. That is a framework or a theoretical framework that's designed to help you think critically about the messages that media teaches you, in a nutshell, right? And then it also blends African-centered education, which is a theory and practice that helps you become aware of who you are in terms of your ancestry, your heritage, your legacy, who you are authentically, not what you are told you are, not the very Eurocentric educational framework that many of us go through that leaves out or even replaces how Black people, African American people should see themselves, their legacy, their heritage, essentially, right? So it blends the two in a way that helps to walk people through first deconstructing the myths that they're told, that they get told Black people are, that comes from generally from media, that allows an opportunity to look at how media sustains racism, essentially, to really kind of analyze the root of systemic racism and then deconstruct the myths that systemic racism transmit through media, essentially.
Right.
It's kind of the deconstruct stage. Then in the reconstruct stage, you have an opportunity to really rebuild the truth, who you are authentically as Black people. That's where the Black experience becomes very much valid and shared and shed in a very powerful and brilliant manner in which it should be. And then the construct phase allows the participant to actually figure out what they have within their own capacity, and also to look at ways that that collaboration with others within that space can be brought forth, so that you can begin to pay this new knowledge forward in a way that systemically dismantles racism, ideologies, etc., etc.
Right, yeah. Because I used that framework, and the participants left feeling very empowered, because actually it was a lovely structure that was clearly defined, so you could see at every stage, the walkthrough from one stage to the next, and putting that stage one stage behind, and creating your own reality, which, as you've said there. But we only have a short amount of time, and you've mentioned critical media literacy. And just for the record again, just to say to anyone listening to this, particularly in the UK here, advertisements. Look, if you do watch TV, just please pay attention to some of the advertisements, and just with a critical eye, look at the representations. If you see Black people in these advertisements, just think about the purpose, the reasoning that might be behind it. And actually, I tend to, Dr. Shani, I turn the volume down when I watch these adverts, because then it's you see much more, behind the initial superficial thing that you think the advert is telling you.
Right. I do that practice as well. And it's also good to turn down the volume of shows that you watch. It's also the the advertisements, and then there's also the actual shows. What is this show teaching me about relationships within this particular group of people? What sort of conclusions am I drawing about the people represented in this show, whether it's white, whether it's Black, right?
Yeah.
Or anything in between, right? How many how many racial and ethnic groups were given, the spotlight on TV from 7 to 9 p.m. Counting how many images you see when the commercials come on, in addition to the shows that you watch, and how were they portrayed? Were they given power? Were they given wealth? Were they given richness? Or were they given, the opposite? So
fantastic. I'd love to be in your class, Dr. Shani.
We support your transformation. Stay tuned for more engaging discussion after this short break.
Think big for a moment. If you could create your best life, how would this look? What if, in just 30 minutes, you had a plan of action to get closer to your dream? Make the impossible possible and claim your free session today. Visit www.satellitelifecoaching.com now.
I recently heard an interview that Oprah Winfrey gave at Stanford. She was asked the question, how do you navigate situations when you're the only woman in the room? Oprah's reply was, I'm usually the only Black woman in the room. She went on to say, there's a phrase by Maya Angelou that says, when I come as one, I stand as 10,000. Oprah Winfrey said that when she walks into a room, she literally sits and calls on the 10,000. She calls on the ancestors to be with her. She calls on them because she knows her being, who I am, where I am, she says, didn't just come from myself, it comes from my heritage.
You're tuned in to the Coaching Lounge podcast with Rebecca Gordon. Find out more about us by visiting satellitelifecoaching.com.
You mentioned dismantling the dominant ideology. The question here is, if we as Black African American Caribbean people take ownership to reconstruct and construct the truths, what does this look like in terms of what's put out there in the media?
If we take ownership, what do you mean? What does this look like? Our role?
Yeah, I mean, actually, just to give a bit more on that in terms of what's happening, or what do we need to do more of, or what are we not doing that needs to be put into place from not, this call for more nominations of Black people for the Oscars. Actually, do we have our own Oscars?
I actually think that that many times we think of things in a binary approach, and I think that the combination of approaches is very important. So you have some actors who have made it well known that they are boycotting the Oscars, which I think is very important. I think when people take a stand to protest, it sends a message. It wakes people up. It makes them think about what's going on. Mm-hmm. I think at the same time, there should be people working to, I'm just using the Oscars as an example, working towards diversity in policy, in the structure of the academy, in terms of the criteria to join the academy. All of those things should be led by a person of color, or two or three or four, focusing on that prong, essentially. There's the protest prong, there's the systemic policy changing prong, right? Okay, yes. And what also gets left out is Afro Media Literacy. It's a time to actually, be people give for individuals to take an opportunity to get educated on who we are and get educated on how media sustains the oppression of our people. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power. So I think that's third prong should always be there, the education piece, and then a systemic approach at some level as a group and individually, and then visible on the front line protest to keep the issue awake in the media is important as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. And I know you do a lot of work, and looking at your website, you've got a lot of projects under the term Advance. Could you just give a little bit more information about the other work that you do, Dr. Shani?
Sure. I conduct trainings, professional development trainings, or lectures. I usually get called for one or the other. So I have done trainings like this past year. I've trained food justice workers in Philadelphia, right, who are struggling with the nonprofit hierarchy that tends to be predominantly white, coming into urban communities to help, quote unquote, the inner city people build gardens, essentially. These nonprofit needed some training. They need training in becoming aware of how they may be unconsciously sustaining the racist or oppressive approaches just because they're individuals who consume media.
Right.
So there's, so I trained those folks. I've been I trained the LA Opera, the staff and educators who conduct a summer camp for urban youth, and they teach them opera, and the young people learn and produce their own opera. And they wanted to become more critically aware of, how media influences their perception of the youth that they work with in order to be more socially just and racially just in their approach in teaching arts ed.
Right.
So I train, Afro Media Literacy is transferable across many different arenas. I also had a chance to facilitate a communication, a time of dialogue and reflection and building knowledge with young Black males and members of law enforcement.
Right. Brilliant. Yes, amazing work you're doing there. Yeah, excellent. Okay. And people listening in to this show will want to check you out, check out your website, perhaps if people want to be in contact with you. Can you please share your details, please, Dr. Shani?
Sure. The website is messagemediaed.org. That's Message Media ED, which is short for education.org. Don't forget that. Everyone does.
Right.
They're like, what is it? Messagemedia.org? No. Media Ed, which is short for education.org. I can also be reached on Twitter at Dr. Shani Byard. DrShani Byard. And I can be reached via email at shani@messagemediaed.org.
Excellent. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. And just before you go, Dr. Shani, what is a parting message, a strong message that you feel people need to hear?
I would say find a way to exercise your lens, and check your media diet.
Yeah, find a way to exercise your lens. That's a superb quote, actually, yes. And make sure that we live from our worldview. Excellent. Okay. I'm very, very honoured to have you in the coaching lounge, Dr. Shani, and it's been a pleasure. Yeah. I mean, I'm very inspired by you, and I would ask people to look at your work, look at your videos, and just take some inspiration. That it's all a friend of mine would say that iron sharpens iron. So I really look at you and see the work that you're doing, and it's also supported me in helping people over here to stand in their own power. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Coaching Lounge. Join us next time for more insightful interviews with inspiring guests. You can hear previous shows on SoundCloud by searching for Satellite Life Coaching. We're always interested to hear your feedback and topic suggestions, so don't hesitate to email us on info@satellitelifecoaching.com.